He just wanted a shower, but the gym staff laughed at him for looking dirty. The veteran turned to leave, humiliated and silent. Then Stallone stepped forward from the shadows, and what he did next made everyone rethink respect. Welcome to Stallone Unleashed. Let's uncover what really happened. The polished chrome and mirrored walls of Apex Fitness gleamed under the carefully calibrated track lighting, reflecting a curated image of health, vitality, and expensive aspiration. It was the kind of place where bodies were sculpted, not merely exercised, and where the subtle scent of eucalyptus from the steam rooms mingled with the faint, metallic tang of exertion. Elias Thorne sat on a low bench near the entrance, ostensibly waiting for a physical therapy appointment he didn't actually have. He was a man out of place in this temple of modern athleticism, his worn corduroy jacket and the quiet lines of his face a stark contrast to the vibrant lycra and taut muscles that moved with practiced ease around him. He wasn't here to work out. He was here to observe, a habit ingrained from a lifetime of watching the world with a keen, discerning eye. His gaze, often drawn to the overlooked details, was currently fixed on the main reception desk, a sleek, minimalist barrier manned by a young man whose name tag read REX, lead motivator. Rex, with his perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that seemed more practiced than felt, was currently engaged in a low, firm conversation with an older gentleman who stood patiently, a faded duffel bag at his feet. The older man was thin, his clothes clean but threadbare, his face etched with a weariness that no amount of expensive gym equipment could erase. There was a quiet dignity about him, however, in the way he stood, his shoulders slightly stooped but not broken, his gaze direct, though tinged with a dawning understanding of the inevitable. Elias had seen him approach the desk a few minutes earlier, had heard his polite inquiry about a day pass, perhaps a discounted rate for seniors. Rex's initial response had been a bright, dismissive wave of the hand, a quick recitation of membership fees that were clearly beyond the older man's reach. Now the tone had shifted. Rex was leaning forward, his voice lower, more insistent, his practiced smile replaced by a frown of managerial disapproval. Elias couldn't hear the words, but the body language was unmistakable. Rejection. The older man listened, his expression unchanging, then gave a slow, resigned nod. He picked up his duffel bag, its strap frayed, its canvas softened with age and use, and turned to leave. As he passed by, Elias caught a glimpse of his eyes. They held a profound disappointment, a quiet sorrow, but no anger, no visible resentment. It was the look of a man long accustomed to being turned away, to being deemed unworthy. In Elias's pocket, his fingers closed around a small, smooth piece of metal, a worn dog tag he'd carried for decades. It wasn't a memento of his own service, but of a promise made to a friend who had never returned, a friend who had understood true strength, true discipline, long before places like Apex Fitness existed. He watched as Rex straightened his designer t-shirt, smoothed his hair, and turned to greet the next liquor-clad patron with his practiced, hollow smile. The incident, it seemed, was already forgotten, a minor blip in the gym's otherwise seamless operation of curated perfection. But Elias did not forget. He felt a familiar stirring, a quiet indignation that settled deep in his bones. This wasn't just about a gym membership. It was about dignity, about respect, about the casual cruelty of a world that's so often judged by appearances, by superficial measures of worth. He rose slowly from the bench, his gaze following the older man as he walked towards the gym's imposing glass doors, a solitary figure against the backdrop of gleaming chrome and manufactured aspiration. The lesson in respect, Elias knew, had not yet begun. It was about to. Elias waited a few moments after the older man, Samuel, as he now thought of him from overhearing Rex use the name with a dismissive tone, had exited. He didn't want to seem like he was following too closely, didn't want to add to the man's discomfort. He, too, walked out of the gleaming, air-conditioned temple of fitness, the bright sunlight and the noise of the city street a jarring contrast. He spotted Samuel a little way down the block, standing near a bus stop, though no bus was in sight. The faded duffel bag was on the ground beside him. He wasn't looking at the traffic, nor at the schedule posted on the bus stop pole. He was staring at his own reflection in the darkened window of a closed shop, a fleeting, almost furtive glance, as if assessing the truth of Rex's unspoken judgment. Elias approached slowly, his footsteps making little sound on the pavement. He stopped a few feet away, not wanting to startle the older man. "Excuse me," Elias said, his voice quiet, unassuming. Samuel turned, his eyes initially wary, the look of a man expecting another rebuff, another slight. When he saw Elias, the wariness softened slightly, replaced by a mild, questioning surprise. He clearly didn't recognize Elias from the gym. "Happens to the best of us," Elias said, nodding vaguely back towards Apex Fitness. "Sometimes the door's open, sometimes it's not what you expect on the other side." Samuel's gaze flickered with understanding, then a resigned shrug. "Place like that, not for everyone, I guess." He didn't elaborate, didn't complain. There was a stoic acceptance in his tone that spoke volumes. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" Elias asked, gesturing towards the empty space on the bench beside the bus stop. "The sun feels good after that refrigerated air." Samuel hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "Suit yourself." Elias sat, leaving a comfortable distance between them. He didn't speak immediately, allowing the silence to settle, to become less charged. He pulled a small, reusable water bottle from his satchel. "Care for some water? It's a bit warm out here." He offered it to Samuel. Again, the hesitation, the searching look. Then a quiet, "Thank you." Samuel took a long drink, the relief evident on his face. He wiped his mouth with the back of a weathered hand. They said I wasn't dressed right, that I might disturb the other members." The words came out slowly, tinged with a remembered humiliation, but also with a quiet defiance, as if by speaking them aloud, he was refusing to let them define him. "Some places," Elias observed, "are more concerned with appearances than with character." He looked at Samuel, not with pity, but with a level, respectful gaze. "Takes more than fancy clothes to make a man." Samuel managed a faint, wry smile. "Tell that to the fellow at the desk." He gestured towards his duffel bag. "Got my old service fatigues in there. Thought maybe a bit of exercise would do me good. Doctor said it would help with the noise in my head." The noise in his head. Elias understood that phrase all too well. He knew the kind of battles that weren't fought on any visible field, the kind that left scars no one could see. The dog tag in his pocket felt heavy. "Physical discipline can be a good anchor," Elias said quietly. "Helps quiet the echoes." Samuel looked at him, then, a flicker of surprise, of recognition in his eyes. "You understand." It wasn't a question. "Some things," Elias said, "are universal." He didn't offer details of his own life, his own struggles. This moment wasn't about him. It was about Samuel, about the injustice he had just endured. But a connection had been made, a fragile thread of shared understanding woven in the quiet space between two strangers on a city bench. The gleaming facade of Apex Fitness seemed a world away, its superficial values irrelevant in the face of this quiet, human exchange. Elias knew he couldn't undo the hurt Samuel had experienced, but perhaps he could offer something else: validation, respect, and a refusal to let such casual cruelty go unchallenged. The resolve that had been forming within him began to solidify. They sat in a comfortable silence for a while longer, the city's ambient noise a backdrop to their unspoken thoughts. Samuel finished the water and handed the bottle back to Elias with a quiet, "Much obliged." His initial defensiveness had largely evaporated, replaced by a weary openness. "That gym," Samuel said, breaking the silence, his voice still low but firmer now. "It looked like a good place. Clean. Lots of equipment. Thought it might help me get back on my feet a bit, you know? Physically, at least." He sighed, a sound heavy with accumulated disappointment. "Been a rough few years since Martha passed. My wife. Lost the house after that. Medical bills. One thing leads to another." Elias listened without interruption, his gaze steady, empathetic. He knew that life could unravel with devastating speed, that the line between stability and precarity was often thinner than most people realized. "And my service," Samuel continued, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. It seems like a lifetime ago. Sometimes I wonder if it even mattered. He tapped the faded duffel bag at his feet. Still got my discharge papers in there. Honorable. Always kept them. Proof I was someone once. You're still someone, Samuel, Elias said, his voice firm but gentle. Your service matters. Your story matters. Samuel looked at him, a flicker of surprise in his tired eyes. You really think so? I know so, Elias stated. The world might forget sometimes, or choose not to see. But that doesn't change the truth. Elias thought of his own friend, the one whose dog tag he carried. That friend's story, too, had been in danger of being forgotten, until Elias had made it his mission to remember, to honor. That young man at the desk, Elias said, his tone carefully neutral. Rex, I believe his name was. He judged you by your clothes, by your appearance. He didn't see the man who served his country, the craftsman who built things, the husband who mourned his wife. Samuel nodded slowly. They see what they want to see, I suppose. Easier that way. Don't have to feel anything. But feeling, Elias countered, is what makes us human. Empathy, understanding, those are strengths, not weaknesses. True strength isn't about sculpted muscles or expensive memberships. It's about character. It's about how you treat others, especially those who are struggling. He paused, then asked, What exactly did Rex say to you, Samuel? If you don't mind my asking. Samuel hesitated, then a shadow crossed his face. He said I looked unhygienic, that I might be carrying something, that my presence would be detrimental to the Apex brand. The words were delivered in a flat, emotionless tone, but the remembered sting was evident in the slight tightening of his jaw. Elias felt a cold anger rise within him, but he kept his expression calm. Detrimental to the brand. The phrase encapsulated everything that was wrong with Apex Fitness, with Rex's superficial worldview. It was a world where image was paramount, where human dignity was a tradable commodity. That brand, Elias said, his voice quiet but edged with steel, is built on a very shallow foundation if it can't accommodate a man like you, Samuel. He stood up. I think it's time I had another word with Rex. Samuel looked alarmed. No, please. Don't make a fuss. It's not worth it. I'm used to it. I'll find another way. This isn't just about you anymore, Samuel, Elias said. It's about respect. It's about not letting that kind of casual cruelty stand. You deserve to be treated with dignity. Everyone does. He placed a reassuring hand on Samuel's shoulder. You wait here. I won't be long. Before Samuel could protest further, Elias turned and walked back towards Apex Fitness, his stride purposeful, his resolve unshakable. The dog tag in his pocket felt like a small, hard piece of his own conscience, urging him forward. Elias re-entered Apex Fitness, the blast of cool, scented air and the thumping bass of workout music a stark contrast to the quiet dignity of his conversation with Samuel. Rex was still at the reception desk, now schmoozing with a young woman in brightly colored athletic wear, his practiced smile firmly in place. He looked up as Elias approached, his smile faltering slightly as he registered Elias's serious demeanor, so different from the usual self-absorbed patrons. Can I help you? Rex asked, his tone a little less effusive than before, a hint of impatience creeping in. He clearly didn't remember Elias from his earlier, brief presence. We need to talk about Samuel, Elias said, his voice low but carrying an undeniable authority that made Rex straighten up, his professional smile vanishing completely. The young woman, sensing the shift in atmosphere, excused herself and drifted towards the cardio machines. Samuel? Rex repeated, feigning ignorance for a moment. Then, recognition dawned, followed by a defensive sneer. Oh, him, the vagrant. Look, I dealt with that situation. He was politely asked to leave. End of story. Politely, Elias countered, his gaze steady, unwavering. Is that what you call telling a man he's unhygienic, that his presence is detrimental to your brand? Rex's face flushed. I have a business to run here, mister. We have standards. We cater to a certain clientele. We can't have people like him loitering around, making our members uncomfortable. People like him? Elias echoed, his voice still quiet but infused with a cold disdain. You mean a veteran? A man who served his country? A man who has fallen on hard times but still carries himself with more dignity than many of your clientele? Rex scoffed. Oh, please, don't give me the sob story. For all I know, he made all that up. Lots of them do. The casual cruelty of the remark, the utter lack of empathy, struck Elias like a physical blow. But he maintained his composure, his anger a tightly controlled force. You didn't ask, did you, Rex? Elias said. You didn't take a moment to find out who he was, what his story might be. You just looked at his clothes, made a judgment, and threw him out. I was protecting my members. Rex insisted, his voice rising. Protecting them from what, Rex? Elias pressed. From poverty? From misfortune? From the uncomfortable truth that life isn't always as polished and perfect as this gym. He gestured around at the gleaming equipment, the mirrored walls reflecting images of strained effort and superficial perfection. This place, it's a facade, isn't it? It's all about image. But true strength, real discipline that comes from within. It's about character. It's about resilience. Things Samuel has in abundance. Things you clearly wouldn't recognize. Several gym members, their workouts interrupted by the escalating tension at the reception desk, had begun to gather at a distance, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and unease. Rex, noticing the audience, seemed to swell with a renewed sense of self-importance. Now, see here, he said, puffing out his chest. I'm the manager of this establishment. I make the rules, and I will not have you, or anyone else, questioning my authority or insulting my members. Elias stood his ground, unmoved. Your authority, Rex, seems to be built on a very fragile foundation of prejudice and superficiality. And your rules, perhaps they need to be re-examined. Perhaps they need to be tempered with a little humanity. He reached into his pocket and took out the worn dog tag. He didn't display it ostentatiously, simply held it in his palm, its metallic coolness a grounding presence. I know a little something about discipline, Rex, he said, his voice dropping, becoming more personal, more intense. About sacrifice, about what it truly means to be strong. And it has nothing to do with expensive memberships or designer workout gear. The confrontation had reached a new level. It was no longer just about Samuel. It was a clash of values, a battle between superficial appearances and profound, hard-won truths. Rex stared at the dog tag in Elias's hand, a flicker of uncertainty, perhaps even a dawning fear, in his eyes. He seemed to sense that Elias was not just another disgruntled customer, that there was a depth, a conviction, to this quiet, unassuming man that he hadn't anticipated. But his arrogance, his ingrained belief in his own authority, quickly reasserted itself. What's that supposed to mean? Rex sneered, gesturing dismissively at the dog tag. You think that gives you some kind of special insight? Some right to come in here and tell me how to run my business? It means, Elias said, his voice steady, each word carefully chosen, that I understand the cost of true commitment. It means I've seen men who possessed more courage and integrity in their little finger than you seem to have in your entire being, men who would never judge another soul by the shabbiness of their coat or the weariness in their eyes. The gathered onlookers murmured amongst themselves, their attention now fully captivated by the unfolding drama. Some looked uncomfortable, others intrigued, a few even nodding in quiet agreement with Elias's words. This gym, Elias continued, his gaze sweeping across the opulent, sterile space. You call it Apex Fitness. Apex, the highest point. But what is the highest point you're striving for here, Rex? Physical perfection at the expense of human decency? A brand that excludes and demeans. Rex's face was now a mottled red. He was clearly losing control, his carefully constructed image of the cool, confident lead motivator crumbling under the weight of Elias's quiet, moral authority. That's enough. Rex sputtered, his voice cracking. I'm calling security. You're disrupting my business. You're harassing my staff. Am I, Rex? Elias asked calmly. Or am I simply holding up a mirror? A mirror that reflects something you'd rather not see? He took a step closer, his presence, though not physically threatening, suddenly immense. You spoke of Samuel disturbing your members. But who is truly disturbed here, Rex? Is it your members? Or is it you, disturbed by the presence of someone who reminds you that life isn't always a glossy magazine cover, that hardship is real, that true strength isn't measured in biceps or bank balances? Just then, a side door opened, and a taller, older man in a sharply tailored suit entered the reception area. He had an air of quiet authority, his gaze sharp and assessing as he took in the scene. Rex, flushed and agitated. Elias, calm and resolute. The ring of curious onlookers. Rex, the newcomer said, his voice calm but firm, carrying an unmistakable note of command. What seems to be the problem here? Rex, visibly deflated, his aggressive posture collapsing. Mr. Harrison, sir, this man, he's causing a disturbance. He's questioning our policies, insulting our members. Mr. Harrison turned his gaze to Elias, his expression unreadable. And you are, sir? My name is Elias Thorne, Elias replied, meeting Mr. Harrison's gaze directly. And I am here because one of your staff, Rex, denied entry to an elderly gentleman, a veteran named Samuel, based solely on his appearance. He was treated with disrespect, with a lack of basic human decency. Mr. Harrison listened intently, his eyes never leaving Elias's face. He then looked at Rex, a slight frown creasing his brow. Is this true, Rex? Rex stammered. Well, sir, it didn't meet our dress code. He smelled. I was concerned about the comfort of our other members. Our brand image. Mr. Harrison cut him off with a curt wave of his hand. Our brand image, Rex, he said, his voice cold, is built on more than just appearances. It's built on respect, on community, on fostering well-being in all its forms. If we are turning away individuals based on superficial judgments, then we are failing that brand, not protecting it. The rebuke was clear, unequivocal. Rex looked as if he'd been struck. The onlookers exchanged knowing glances. The tide had turned. Mr. Harrison, the owner of Apex Fitness as it was now clear, continued to address Rex, his voice low but carrying the unmistakable weight of finality. You will find Mr. Samuel, Rex. You will apologize to him personally, and you will offer him a complimentary, indefinite membership to this facility. Furthermore, you will ensure he is treated with the utmost respect and courtesy by all staff members, yourself included. Is that understood? Rex, his face pale, his earlier arrogance completely gone, could only manage a choked, yes, sir. Understood. He looked utterly defeated, the bluster and bravado stripped away to reveal a small, chastened man. Good, Mr. Harrison said. He then turned his attention back to Elias. Mr. Thorne, he said, his tone now one of sincere respect. I apologize for the actions of my manager. What you witnessed here today is not reflective of the values we aspire to uphold at Apex Fitness. Thank you for bringing this matter to my attention and for reminding us of what truly matters. Elias inclined his head. It was Samuel who deserved the apology, Mr. Harrison, not I. But I appreciate your willingness to rectify the situation. Consider it done, Mr. Harrison affirmed. He then addressed the onlookers, his voice clear and resonant. Let this be a lesson to all of us. True fitness, true strength, is not just about the body. It's about the character, the spirit. It's about how we treat one another. Apex Fitness will strive to be a place where everyone, regardless of their outward appearance or their circumstances, feels welcome and respected. A smattering of applause broke out amongst the gym members, a genuine expression of approval for Mr. Harrison's decisive action and principled stand. Rex, meanwhile, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him up. He mumbled something about finding Samuel and practically fled from the reception area. Elias watched him go, not with triumph, but with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Justice, in this small instance, had been served, not through aggression or loud demands, but through a steadfast adherence to principle, a quiet refusal to let an injustice pass unchallenged. Mr. Harrison extended his hand to Elias. Thank you again, Mr. Thorne. You're a man of integrity. If you're ever in need of our facilities, consider yourself an honored guest. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, Elias replied, shaking his hand. But my concern was primarily for Samuel. As it should have been, Mr. Harrison agreed. And thanks to you, he will now receive the respect and opportunity he deserves. The atmosphere in the gym had shifted dramatically. The earlier tension had dissipated, replaced by a sense of relief, of a wrong righted. Members returned to their workouts, but there was a new thoughtfulness in their expressions, a subtle awareness that something significant had just transpired. Elias, his task accomplished, prepared to leave. He had not sought the spotlight, had not intended to become the catalyst for such a public confrontation. But when faced with a clear injustice, his conscience had compelled him to act. The dog tag in his pocket felt a little lighter now, its weight transformed from a burden of memory to a quiet affirmation of principles upheld. As he reached the door, he saw Rex returning, looking even more flustered than before. He was not alone. Beside him, looking bewildered but with a dawning sense of hope in his eyes, was Samuel. Rex was speaking to him in low, apologetic tones, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Samuel caught Elias's eye and offered a small, grateful smile. Elias simply nodded in return, a silent acknowledgement of a connection forged in adversity. The lesson in respect had been delivered and received. The scene that unfolded next was one of quiet, almost awkward, reconciliation. Rex, under the watchful eye of Mr. Harrison, formally apologized to Samuel. His words were stilted, clearly difficult for him, but they seemed sincere enough, born more of genuine remorse now than of fear of his employer. Mr. Samuel, Rex began, his voice barely above a mumble, I was wrong. My judgment was poor. I sincerely apologize for the way I treated you. There's no excuse for it. Samuel, a man clearly unaccustomed to such apologies, especially from figures of authority, seemed taken aback. He looked from Rex to Mr. Harrison, then to Elias, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Well, son, Samuel said finally, his voice gentle, we all make mistakes. Important thing is to learn from him. There was no bitterness in his tone, only a weary wisdom. Mr. Harrison then stepped forward. Samuel, he said, his voice warm and welcoming. On behalf of Apex Fitness, I'd like to offer you a lifetime complimentary membership. All our facilities, all our classes are available to you. And please consider this your gym, a place where you will always be treated with dignity and respect. Samuel was visibly moved. Tears welled in his eyes, and he struggled for words. Sir, I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever expected. It's what you deserve, Samuel, Mr. Harrison said. And perhaps, he added, with a meaningful glance towards Rex, it's a small way for us to begin to earn back a little of the respect we so carelessly discarded today. Rex, to his credit, nodded in agreement, his expression one of genuine contrition. Elias watched this exchange with a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had not sought to humiliate Rex, but to educate him, to awaken a sense of empathy that had clearly been dormant. And Mr. Harrison's principled intervention had been crucial in ensuring a just and meaningful resolution. Samuel turned to Elias, his eyes shining with gratitude. Mr. Thorne, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I can't thank you enough. You stood up for me when no one else would. You stood up for yourself, Samuel, Elias replied, by carrying yourself with dignity, even in the face of disrespect. I just helped amplify your voice a little. He saw a new light in Samuel's eyes, a spark of renewed self-worth that had been missing earlier. The offer of a gym membership was more than just access to exercise equipment. It was an affirmation of his value, a tangible symbol of his reacceptance into a community that had, however briefly, rejected him. The other gym members who had witnessed the earlier confrontation now approached Samuel, not with curiosity, but with genuine warmth. Some introduced themselves, offered words of welcome, even shared stories of their own struggles and how the gym had helped them. The atmosphere of exclusivity and superficiality that had permeated Apex Fitness earlier seemed to have been replaced by a more inclusive, more human spirit. Elias, feeling his work was done, began to slip away quietly. He had no desire to be the center of attention. His reward was in seeing Samuel's quiet dignity restored, in seeing a lesson in respect learned and embraced. Mr. Harrison caught his eye as he neared the door and gave him a subtle nod of thanks, a gesture of shared understanding that needed no words. The thumping bass of the workout music still played, the weights still clanked, the treadmills still hummed. But the heart of Apex Fitness, it seemed, had undergone a subtle, yet profound, transformation. Elias stepped out into the late afternoon air, the sounds of the gym fading behind him. The street seemed quieter now, the earlier tension dissipated. He took a deep breath, the crisp autumn air feeling clean and invigorating in his lungs. He felt a sense of quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes not from personal gain, but from having acted in accordance with one's deepest principles. He had not sought conflict, but he had not shied away from it when it was necessary. He walked slowly down the street, his thoughts turning inward. He reflected on the events of the day, Samuel's quiet resilience, Rex's initial arrogance and subsequent contrition, Mr. Harrison's principled leadership. It had been a microcosm of larger societal struggles, a small battle fought, and, in its own way, one on the front lines of human dignity. He thought of the dog tag in his pocket. It had belonged to a young man who had faced far greater adversities, who had understood sacrifice in its starkest, most brutal form. That friend would have approved, Elias knew, of his standing up for Samuel. He would have understood that true strength is often found not in aggression, but in the quiet courage to defend the vulnerable, to speak truth to power, however entrenched that power might seem. The memory of his friend, though tinged with sorrow, also brought a sense of affirmation. The values they had shared, integrity, loyalty, respect for all, regardless of station, were timeless, and it was his duty, his privilege, to continue to uphold them in whatever small ways he could. He passed by the bus stop where he had first spoken with Samuel. The bench was empty now, but he could almost see Samuel sitting there, his shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with a weary resignation. The contrast with the Samuel he had just left in the gym, the Samuel whose eyes now held a spark of hope, whose dignity had been reaffirmed, was profound. It was a reminder that small acts of courage, of compassion, could indeed make a difference, could change the trajectory of a life, however subtly. He reached into his pocket, and his fingers closed around the worn metal of the dog tag. It was a constant reminder of the promises he carried, the values he strove to live by. It wasn't a burden, but an anchor, grounding him in a sense underscore of purpose that transcended his own personal concerns. The world, he knew, would continue to present challenges, injustices, moments where a stand needed to be taken. And he would continue to meet them, not with fanfare or self-aggrandizement, but with the quiet, unwavering conviction that had guided him thus far. As he turned the corner onto his own quiet street, he saw a group of children playing, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. It was a sound of innocence, of hope, a reminder of what was truly worth fighting for. He allowed himself a rare, faint smile. The lesson in respect, learned and taught at Apex Fitness today, was perhaps a small contribution to a world where such laughter could continue, unburdened by the casual cruelties of indifference and prejudice. The following week, Elias found himself walking past Apex Fitness again, not by design, but as part of his usual route. He paused for a moment, looking through the large glass windows. The gym was busy, filled with the usual assortment of dedicated fitness enthusiasts. But something felt different. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a lightness that hadn't been there before. He saw Samuel near the weight machines, not looking out of place at all. He was dressed in clean, simple workout clothes, a t-shirt and sweatpants that Mr. Harrison had apparently provided from the gym's own small stock of branded apparel. He was moving with a new confidence, his earlier frailty replaced by a focused determination. He was engaged in a quiet conversation with another gym member, an older woman, both of them smiling. Rex was at the reception desk, but his demeanor was changed. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a more subdued, professional attentiveness. He even managed a polite, almost respectful nod to a patron who looked a little less affluent than the usual Apex clientele. Elias didn't go in. He didn't need to. What he saw through the window was enough. It was a small scene, but it spoke volumes about the ripple effect of one person's principled stand. The lesson in respect had not been a fleeting one. It seemed to have taken root. He continued his walk, a quiet sense of satisfaction warming him. He knew that Samuel's journey was still long, that a gym membership alone wouldn't solve all his problems. But it was a start. It was a place of welcome, of community, a place where he could rebuild not just his physical strength, but also his sense of self-worth. Elias thought about the nature of true strength. It wasn't about physical prowess or financial success or outward appearances. It was about resilience, integrity, compassion. It was about the courage to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult, even when one stands alone. It was about recognizing the inherent dignity in every human being, regardless of their circumstances. These were the lessons his friend, the owner of the dog tag, had taught him, lessons forged in the crucible of hardship and sacrifice. And these are the lessons he tried, in his own quiet way, to live by and to pass on. The dog tag in his pocket felt like a quiet affirmation. It was a symbol of a promise kept, not just to his friend, but to himself, a promise to never turn away from injustice, to never let the vulnerable be silenced or dismissed. As he walked, he passed a community notice board filled with flyers for local events, support groups, volunteer opportunities. He paused, his eyes drawn to a small, handwritten note seeking volunteers for a local veterans outreach program. He considered it for a moment. Perhaps, he thought, there were other Samuels out there, other quiet battles for dignity that needed to be fought. He took down the number. The work, he knew, was never truly done. But each small act of courage, each quiet victory for respect and compassion, added a little more light to a world that often seemed too dark. And that, Elias Thorne knew, was a strength worth cultivating, a fitness of the soul that no gym, however exclusive, could ever truly measure. The story of what happened at Apex Fitness, as such stories often do, began to circulate in hushed tones, first among the gym members, then trickling out into the wider community. It wasn't reported in any newspaper, nor did it feature on any social media feed. It was a quieter kind of legend, passed from person to person, embellished perhaps in the telling, but its core message of respect and dignity remained intact. Rex, it was said, was a changed man. The lead motivator had become a more genuine motivator. His interactions with members, especially those who seemed a little less confident or a little more worn by life, marked by newfound patience and empathy. Some said he even started volunteering at a local soup kitchen on his days off, a rumor that, if true, spoke of a profound internal shift. Samuel, meanwhile, became a quiet fixture at Apex. He never pushed himself too hard. His workouts more about maintaining mobility and finding a sense of routine than about achieving any kind underscore of physical apex. But his presence was a constant, gentle reminder of the events of that day, a living testament to the gym's renewed commitment to inclusivity. He often shared quiet conversations with other members, his gentle wisdom and dry humor winning him an unlikely circle of friends. He even started helping out in the gym's small, neglected rooftop garden, his carpenter's hands finding a new purpose in tending to the struggling plants. Elias, for his part, continued his quiet life. He occasionally saw Samuel at the gym, their interactions marked by a warm, unspoken understanding. He never mentioned the incident at the reception desk again, nor did Samuel. It was a chapter that had found its resolution, a lesson learned, a dignity restored. The dog tag remained in Elias's pocket, a silent companion. It was a reminder not just of past sacrifices, but of ongoing responsibilities, of the quiet battles for justice and compassion that were fought every day in countless unseen ways. He did follow up on the volunteer opportunity he had seen advertised. He found himself spending a few hours each week at the Veterans Outreach Center, listening to stories, offering quiet support, helping men and women who, like Samuel, had served their country and now found themselves struggling to navigate a world that often seemed to have forgotten them. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no public accolades, no dramatic confrontations. It was simply the quiet, steady work of bearing witness, of offering a hand, of affirming the inherent worth of every individual. It was, in its own way, a continuation of the stand he had taken at Apex Fitness. One afternoon, while volunteering at the center, he encountered Mr. Harrison, the owner of Apex. He, too, had become involved, offering free gym passes and sponsoring a wellness program for the veterans. They exchanged a brief, knowing nod. No words were necessary. They were both, in their own ways, trying to build something stronger, something more resilient, not just in bodies, but in the heart of their community. The lesson in respect, it seemed, had a ripple effect, extending far beyond the mirrored walls of a single fitness center. It was a quiet reminder that true strength is measured not by what we lift, but by whom we lift up. And Elias Thorne, with his worn dog tag and his unwavering moral compass, continued to do just that, one quiet act of courage at a time.